So we'll start off with Manchester City. Richard Masters told the Financial Times the initial 115 charges verdict will be purely on liability and sentencing will follow in a separate process. Does that suggest it could be quite a while before we actually hear the final verdict on this and what will happen with Manchester City?
Yeah, well, he didn't actually say it. It wasn't a quote from him. So we're not completely clear, but we have spoken about this before because it was detailed in a previous article in The Lawyer, who have had very, very good information. The Lawyer is an industry publication for the legal profession in the UK, and they've had very good information so far about the case in terms of the detail, who's acting for who, and the actual fact that it had started was an exclusive from them. They had the first pictures from outside the arbitration, so they've been very well briefed. This piece in the FT seems to confirm it, and I doubt that it was just a case of them reading the Lawyer piece. I suspect that they were briefed that by the Premier League as part of the overall process of that interview. So I think we can probably take it now as confirmed that that's the way the process will work. What that means is that you will have an elongated process. If City are found to be liable for any of the breaches, because what's then going to happen is you will then have a pause where the parties digest the liability decision, which is going to be very long and detailed, and they will then both want to make their representations and formal submissions in a hearing in front of the panel in respect to sanction. Now, clearly, if that's only about cooperation, for example, I would think that sanction hearing will be quite short. Maybe even in writing as opposed to in person. But of course, if it is for the more serious breaches, then you can expect the sanction hearing to be very lengthy. I would think probably could easily be a couple of weeks for that hearing. Just such is going to be the seriousness of the matter and the submissions of the parties, both in terms of aggravating factors and mitigation, if there is any mitigation. So we'll just have to wait and see. But it will likely drag the process out, and of course then there's the appeal, and I think there's been some sort of debate about whether you would have a split appeal process, or whether effectively the parties will be told to wait until the full judgment and then to appeal the liability and the sanction together. I think it'll be the latter. Otherwise, you could have the complexity where the liability hearing is being appealed whilst waiting for the sanction hearing. So that would seem to be a bit confusing. So I think probably the appeal will have to wait until we've got the full verdict. And of course, the thing about, if you go down what we just said in terms of it, let's say being a 2-week sanction set of submissions and hearing, separate hearing, then of course you've got to then wait for the decision to come out on that, and that itself could be a month, 6 weeks, maybe more. Effectively, the Everton and the Nottingham Forest cases were effectively ultimately sanction hearings because liability had been admitted. Mm-hmm. So, and we saw those took around 6 weeks, maybe longer, from the actual panel to the decision. So this is going to drag on. Now looks like it's going to drag on to the end of the season. That in some ways could suit everybody involved. It's only going to drag on to the end of the season if City are found liable for anything. Of course, if they're cleared, then the question will be, what will the Premier League want to do about appeal? But if City are found liable for anything, this could drag on to the end of the season. In some ways, that's positive in that it allows people to deal with it in the closed season to an extent. But of course, if the sanction is very serious, then you've got the issue of what happens with relegation, or which season do you take the points from, or all of that sort of stuff. So look, it's always been complicated, and it remains complicated, and I don't think anybody's got very precise answers at the moment.
Absolutely. In terms of the Club World Cup, we've had some figures come out about what the prize money could be for that. The suggestions that Man City and Chelsea could earn £78 million if they were to win the Club World Cup. Is that enough of an incentive, do you think, for them to take the tournament seriously, even though it is at the end of the season, players could be tired, etc.?
Well, obviously it's a lot of money. I mean, it's a lot of money even for Premier League teams, but can you imagine the impact this has in some of the smaller divisions around the world? So I think Auckland are in the tournament, I saw. I mean, you can imagine, you're talking about, I would think that the sort of participation money alone will be multiples of their entire revenue. So for the European teams, clearly winning it is going to be worth it. If it's going to be worth, let's say, €100 million-ish, $100 million-ish, that is going to be worth fighting for. It's a very, very significant amount of money. It's akin to probably finishing quarterfinals, maybe semi-finals for some teams in the Champions League. It's a multiple of what you would get even winning the Europa. So, it's very, very significant money on top of all of your other revenue streams. And, of course, only 2 English teams can get that money. So it's a big advantage. And but I think what you've got is the division there between the football side and the financial side. The financial side are going to be very, very interested in it, because it's going to be transformational for some teams. It's going to be very useful for others, like City, like Chelsea. Pretty much all of the European teams are going to be very useful. Not completely transformational, but very useful. For some teams around the world, it's going to be transformational. So you're going to have the financial people going, this is amazing. And then the flip side of it is you're going to have the footballing side going, this is really problematic because of a tournament that's going to be spread across a number of weeks in the close season. And they're going to be worried about the following season and the impact that it's going to have, especially on the back of what we've seen, certainly at City and Arsenal this season with injuries, for example. Probably less so with Liverpool, but so look, it's a lot of money, and if those numbers are real, and I do hesitate to say they are, I think we should have a little bit of caution. There's a lot of people that want a bit of that money, so I suspect quite a lot of it's going to go into solidarity payments across various leagues rather than going to the individual participants in the tournament. But look, it's certainly going to mitigate City's revenue loss from the Champions League exit this season. That's for sure. And for Chelsea, it's going to fill a gap that they've got, say, from front of shirt, and also from being in the Conference League rather than the Champions League. But the question is, what is the real cost of it? So, I mean, not just the cost. There is a very high cost, by the way, in respect of what it actually costs for a club to take, let's say, 50 people for 3 to 4 weeks to the States in a tournament. That is a real cost, in the millions of pounds probably. So they do have costs of participation. But the bigger cost, of course, is what impact does it have on next season?